Joined by Kellie Stenzel. She's currently the Director of Instruction at Dutchman's Pipe Golf Club. She's an LPGA Professionals member, PGA Masters Professional. She was recently named Southeast Section Teacher of the Year and Teacher of the Year by the LPGA Professionals. And she has over 30 years of teaching. So thanks, Kellie, for your time. And how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. Having a fantastic day down here in Florida, and I'm looking forward to chatting golf with you and learning a little bit more about you as well. So, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, your name, Teacher of the Year, Southeast Section, Teacher of the Year by the LPGA Professionals. Just what do these, recognitions mean? I know you've said, it's overwhelming. It just means a lot to you. So just tell me what these recognitions mean to you.
It's really interesting. It really means a lot, and it's just because so many of the people, whether it's my PGA South Florida section or my LPGA women, these are my mentors, these are my friends, these are professionals that I've worked with and trying to pass some of that along to the younger professionals that work with me. So, it's really nothing that I was really ever seeking, but it
Mhm.
is nice to be recognized. And I've been a member of the South Florida PGA section for a long time, kind of since I first started in golf. So I am a very proud member. And to me, it's very important that I've been a member for a long time, but that I'm also giving back. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun month for sure.
Yeah. And I see, you do a lot of instructional videos, and I read a little bit about one of your books. So, as a how-to guide, basically for beginner, women starting golf. Just tell me a little about, you've been coaching, teaching, and for over 30 years. Just tell me a little about, what teaching means to you, and just, your philosophy, because I'm sure it's, getting more people involved with golf and starting playing golf. Since I was reading some of your book and just watching some of the videos that you do, your instructional videos. So just tell me about, what, teaching for you for over 30 years. What is that meant?
How old are you, Gavin?
26.
Okay. I wish I was 26. You get to a point where you don't try to do the math anymore. So every time you say 30, I go, "Oh my God, has it really been 30?" But it has. And but it's still really fun. I am very lucky. I get to be around a lot of really interesting people, and I spend a lot of time with people that I really like as far as their person. So most of my work does not feel like work. So that's really, really fun. But I'll kind of flash back to when I wrote the books. And the first one, The Women's Guide to Golf, a Handbook for Beginners, it wasn't meant to be a book. I just kind of sat down and started writing things down. And I was physically writing at that point. I had notebooks and it just kind of came very easy. And I just kind of enjoyed it. And I just kept writing and writing. And then I had several notebooks and I looked at them and I said, well, if this was going to be a book, what is it missing? And then I kind of put that together and typed it up and looked at it and said, well, let's look and see what's in the market. Let's see, because I teach a lot of women and men at this point now, but let's see what's out there in the women's market. And there really was so little for women. There were very few books. There was not a lot of instruction material. And not that instruction is completely different for women, but there certainly are some differences. So I decided to kind of make myself the voice of what I consider the forgotten woman golfer. And I've really kind of carried that forward. And because women will tend to learn differently. So, I was fortunate enough to find a publisher for my first book, the beginner book, which did pretty well, simply because I think women, we just tend to think we're beginners for such a long period of time. The word beginner resonated. And then I continued to write two other books with my same publisher, Lower Scores, which was basically short game, and then Consistent Golf. So, that trying to just create a very simple message, it's very understandable. And because golf can be very confusing, has been an important message of mine kind of going forward. Because there are fantastic technical teachers out there who study all the launch monitor data, all the force plate, all the 3D. These people are brilliant. And I understand some of that. But to me, being able to take that shared information that they've been generous enough to share with me and simplify it in plain English is really important to me because it's got to be simple because once you confuse somebody, you lose them.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to get your take on just, what do you think the current state of, women's golf, like in the LPGA tour is? Because I've talked with a lot of, you know, college coaches specifically about, like Lottie Wood won in her first, event as a professional pro saying I was there and I saw her first, winning her first pro start. So just where do you think, the state of women's golf, is? I think it's on a trajectory, but I think, at least my opinion, I think there's more to do, like the top names, like, some people might know, Nelly Korda, but, maybe not as much like a Hannah Green or like a Gino Titicole. So I just wanted to get your perspective on what you think the current state of, women's golf is currently.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good question. And we could play it safe and we could kind of give all the answers that maybe the media might want us to hear. But, let's be kind of honest about this. It's not attracting enough viewership, and there aren't enough people at these tournaments that the sponsors really want to be involved. And that's really kind of what it is. You have to remember it's a business. Now, the LPGA Tour did something recently that was very, very smart. They hired Craig Kessler. Craig Kessler was the CEO of PGA of America. He's a very, very smart man. So that was a fantastic step in the right direction because he's very business oriented. And is it a sport or is it a business? I think is an important question, but he is business minded enough. I think he's really, really going to help. And then another opinion of mine, and is an opinion, is that we've got to really personalize these women. Like you said, and Gavin, I agree with you 100%. We kind of know the top names, but there's a lot of the names even I don't know, and I should know. But I think you've got to like know their personalities. Like, did you watch the F1 on Netflix? Did you watch the F1 series?
No, I did not.
Okay. I would be the last person you would think would be like an F1 fan, but when I watched that and I related to the drivers and the team principals and the team owners, now I'm in because of the personalities that I really connected with. And I'd love to see the LPGA doing more of that. Like these women are amazing, but we don't know who they are and we don't know their personalities. And maybe there's a little bit lost in translation because there are a lot of foreigners, but let's teach them to speak a little more English and maybe let's show them learning to speak English and let's watch them making mistakes and let's personalize them. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done better. Now, one more last thing. You know, Kai Trump playing in this LPGA event last week. She's down here where I am. And you can love that or you can hate that, but I thought it was great. I thought I she always handles herself extremely well. I thought she played great. She shot 80, I think 83, 75. I mean, under that pressure, good for her and good for the LPGA to understand that her social media following is the direction that they need to get more eyeballs and to get more sponsors. So maybe she took one player spot, and I understand that being maybe a little controversial, but I give her kudos. I thought she was just fantastic, and I thought the LPGA Tour was very smart to do that. And what are your thoughts?
I think it's, I've talked with some players. I think it's just more accessibility. I think like if you go to a tournament, they're very, approachable. Like, I volunteer at LPGA tournament. I've been to them. They're very approachable. I think it's just getting more eyeballs on it. Like, like my parents and my grandparents, they know, they watch the PGA tour and they know all the, they know the names. They know Colin Morikawa, Shane Lowry, Rory, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, all those guys. But, I asked, just driving with my mom, I asked her, name three LPGA players, and all she can name is Nelly, just because I, told her and because I watched LPGA golf. So I think it's just more accessibility and just, frankly, there's only so much sports people can watch, and so they're obviously going to prioritize, watching the men's sport, watching, just the PGA Tour, and then, to then, watch a second golf tournament after that, it's a lot. So I think just, more accessibility, just putting on more, at prime time, like, the PGA Tour is on, 1 to 6 on TV, and that's prime time when people are watching, golf. So I think it's just that, just making it people more approachable, and just, those are some of my thoughts, and just giving more, opportunities to these different players. Because, I've talked with college coaches, they have different initiatives to give the top players, now, positions, on the Epson tour and things like that. And so, because these players, they're ready to play, you take like a Lottie Wood and a Roseng, they have the game. And I've talked to college coaches, they have the game to, go to the LPGA tour and, compete and even win now. So
Yeah,
those are
there's
my
a ton of
thoughts.
good players.
Hmm.
There's a ton. It's fun. I
Yeah.
went to the US Open when it was at Sabonic. and I was kind of anxious to walk the course and watch the players. But the walking of the course was a little bit difficult, kind of the way they had set it up there. And I had worked there before, so I knew the course, but just kind of the way it was roped off, it was hard to really walk. Like you had to go all the way around greens and crisscross. So also maybe making it a little bit easier for the fans kind of on site to be able to get up close and personal. And I'd love to see the players take off their headphones when the fans are there. I know it's their job, but it's also the fans that are help raising the money for the purses as well.
Yeah, and I think a final note, what I think is, it can be difficult to, because you can have a, player, and even like, on the PGA Tour, they have like the Champions Tour now, so you can follow a player, even when they turn 50 plus, on the LPGA Tour, you have a player and maybe they have like a 10, 15, 20-year career, like we just had Stacey Lewis retire, so, because then start a family and you retire, so I think the LPGA Tour, your career is so, it's a lot shorter than it is on the PGA Tour because so it's kind of harder, if you only have a player out there for like, maybe 15 or 20 years at most, it's hard to kind of follow them as much. Maybe that's
Yeah,
another
if you want to
thought.
have a family, it's definitely tricky. I mean, there's at some point,
Yeah.
you want to be home with your family, you want to be there taking your kids to school. So I completely understand that.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about some of the other things, you do, just to, support and, just grow, women's golf. You serve on the member engagement committee and you do speaking engagements. You spoke at the 2024 PGA show. So just tell me about some of the things you do to elevate, women in golf.
I want to elevate golf in general. I just feel like kind of teaching women, tends to fall in the lap of a female golf instructor. So typically if I'm new or at a club, a lot of times I'll hear, "Oh, you're the women's teacher." And my answer is always yes. I am the women's teacher because I will take them all. They're going to be safe with me. I'm no matter if they're a brand new golfer or they've played their whole life, they're safe, even if they're just feel like they're not good, I got them. I'm going to take care of them. So that's always been really important to me. And in the last couple of years, I've become more comfortable kind of in speaking publicly on how I teach and what I teach because it's a little intimidating because some of these technology teachers, they're so smart and the way they talk and the fancy words they use. And it's not that I don't understand a fair amount of that. It's just not the way I've been trained and it's not been the way I felt I got the most out of my students. So I've become much more comfortable in kind of speaking the word of what I teach on a daily basis, which is basically just kind of cause and effect and how to make a golfer better really quickly. And I got that when I learned from Mike Adams at PGA National. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you can determine what you want the ball to do and you can determine what is the number one mistake that's causing it, and you just fix that one mistake, which sometimes is very small, a lot of times the other compensating errors will go away. So, and you can make that simple. There's only so much information that you can process in a second and a half. And what's really fun, and as I mentioned, I learned a majority of this from Mike Adams, is when you fix the right thing, they start hitting the golf ball better fast. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just got to be mindful and focused on that one thing kind of over and over until it becomes a habit. So, yeah, so my speaking has been really fun. I was a little nervous about it. I was, interested to see like the feedback I got. Fortunately, there are surveys at a lot of these instruction events. So when I spoke at the PGA Merchandise Show last year, I was able to read the reviews, which I read every single one of them. And fortunately, most of them were quite good. So I was happy to see that. But I also take a look at the reviews and see if there are things that I can do better. So it's been me just kind of being a little more confident in sharing what I teach because my students trust me and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. So you're from a little bit about your background. You're from Geneva, New York. Your grandfather was a PGA professional, and your father played briefly on the PGA Tour. Just tell me about, growing up in upstate New York, in between, Rochester and Syracuse, and just what it was like, having a grandfather who was a PGA pro and your father playing on the PGA Tour. Just how that was for you growing up.
Well, it was cold, but it was great. So Geneva's kind of a
Yeah.
small town in the Finger Lakes, and I was originally born in Buffalo, so I am a big Bills fan.
Oh yeah.
So to forever I will be. But I was, my grandfather was kind of a stern grandfather. So he would teach me a little bit, but not a lot. But he taught me work ethic. So he was funny because he would take a look at my hands, and the more calluses I have or I had, he would give me money. So if my calluses weren't there, I'd get a couple dollars. And if my calluses were really good, I'd get like a $5 bill, which seemed like a lot of money at that time. But my dad was very influential. So my father owned a car dealership in Geneva, but was a very, very good golfer in his own right, obviously. The summer that he followed the PGA Tour and qualified, I think he qualified for 7 out of 9 events. So good player. But my dad was just super influential in shaping the person that I am. He was very optimistic. He was always a positive influence. There was never any doubt that he was instilling confidence in me that I could do anything that I chose to do. And that really has still very a big part of who I am today. And then I just played a ton of golf with my dad. We'd walk, we'd carry our bags, that kind of together time, walking and talking golf and at life, in life was really important, and when he sold his business, he and I went on a father-daughter trip to Ireland and played 10 days of golf and just same thing, kind of walked and carried our bags and just had a great time. So I've been very lucky to have a father and a grandfather who were very, very good golfers, but more influential in the person that I am.
Great. So growing up in Geneva, New York, tell me about some of the things you would do, golf wise during the winter and just, right now we're getting close to the winter. So just tell me about, for those people in, cold weather states, just tell me about some of the things that someone can do, if they can't go outside, if they live in, a cold weather state where it's going to snow this winter.
Yeah, it's tricky. Honestly, I didn't do a lot.
Okay.
Uh, I putted a lot. We had one of those little putting things that you could put into and it kind of kicks the ball back, which is obviously evolved into like perfect putting mat now, which I have in my house here. But I really we didn't travel a lot. So it's not like I went down where it was warm to play. I would putt and then I played other sports. And that might be kind of a message, especially for your kind of younger golfers, your junior golfers and your high school golfers. You don't necessarily have to play golf year round. You can play other sports. I skied, I played volleyball, I played tennis. So I think a lot of these kids are getting coerced into that they've got to pick their sport and they've just got to do that sport from a very young age. And I'm not sure that's the right choice. Everybody gets to make their own choice. But for me, and also for my 17-year-old son, who's a pretty good golfer now, there's nothing wrong with becoming an athlete and playing other sports and just kind of having some fun in your sport too. So I putted a lot, but that was really about it. And I always was a pretty good putter, so maybe that didn't hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I would have thought the opposite because I talked with, I believe it was last year, current, she attends the University of Georgia. She, uh, college golfer. She's from Massachusetts, and she even said mostly during the winter she, takes some time away from golf and things like that. So it's interesting that mostly these top level players, like yourself, you were back in the day, that you just take time away from golf. I would have thought the opposite, but
Yeah, and it
you
might
know,
be different now because it's so competitive. But I
yeah,
watched, when I played at Furman and I played professionally for a little while afterward, I just watched a lot of the girls who had been playing since they were so young and they just had too much pressure from their parents. I watched a lot of them just not really enjoy it and eventually get out of it. So, it has to be fun. And when it becomes too much pressure, I've seen the kids, they turn away from it. So my father was very good at it was my choice. And if it wasn't fun, I didn't have to play.
yeah. So as you mentioned, after growing up in Geneva, New York, you attended Furman University in South Carolina, finished second in the national championship your senior year. Then you played professionally for 5 years. Just tell me more or less, about your experience at Furman and just what the transition was like going from, growing up in upstate New York to then going down south and playing in South Carolina, how that was for you.
Oh, it was great to go from Western New York to go to South
So the
Carolina.
weather a lot better.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it wasn't perfect. We had occasional
Yeah.
snow, but Furman was just a nice, smaller, very academic school. And I really chose it for its academics. And obviously, we had a fantastic golf team and a great, great coach in Mick Potter, who's now at Alabama. But he was a big reason why I chose Furman, other than the academics. And when I got to Furman, I was an okay golfer, but I knew I had to work really hard to get into the playing lineup. So I didn't play a ton of tournaments my freshman year. I played a couple, but I worked really hard. So there's my grandfather kind of kicking in. I knew I could outwork everybody, and I kind of did. So by the time I became a sophomore, kind of, and through my senior year, I played in almost every match. And I was kind of proud when I got to Furman, I didn't have any scholarship. And then by my senior year, I had earned a full scholarship. And I got a lot better while I was there. I really hadn't anticipated trying to play. But the women that had come kind of in front of me, a lot of them had gone out and played some mini tour stuff. So at that point, I had a nice business degree. My golf was a lot better. So I decided to try to play professional golf for a little while. And that actually was quite a bit of fun. I started out on the Futures Tour, which would have been like the mini tour at that point. And the tournaments were fun and they were nice, but I felt like I wanted to see a little more of the world. So a good friend of mine, Kathy Hart, and we decided to start playing more foreign tours. So we were scheduled to play in Europe that summer, but we left the Futures Tour a little bit early, went over and played in South Africa. So coming out of school and graduated to professional golf, I just found it a lot more fun and a lot more interesting to go and play the foreign tours. So we really traveled the entire world playing professional golf, Europe, Asia, Australia. It was South Africa twice. So it was really fun. And I got to meet a lot of great people and see the world. And I just wasn't quite good enough, but no regrets because I had stints of playing pretty decently. I came close to making the LPGA tour, but I just wasn't quite good enough. And that's when I transitioned to teaching.
Yeah. So you played professionally for 5 years. Just how was your time playing professionally? And just, if you were to sit down right now with like let's say a college senior who's going to go play professionally after graduating, what advice would you give to a current, college golfer who's going to go play professionally?
Yeah, I would say if you have any inclination to, and you can raise a little bit of money to do it, I would highly suggest it because there aren't any regrets. Whether you make it or whether you don't make it, at least you tried, and there's a lot to be said for that, as you decide what's next. Um, I would find the best coach that you can find. Find a coach that knows how to train tour players. Now, you may already have a great coach, but that great coach should also be engaging somebody who can at least guide them or also team coach that player into knowing how to take the next step. So like I said, my son Matthew's a good player, but I don't teach a lot of tour players, so I have handed off. He works with Jason Bale on his full swing, and he works with Eric Dietrich on his putting, and both of those professionals know how to train tour players. So to take that next step, you need the professionals who know how to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned this gets to my next question. This you mentioned getting a good coach and getting a coach specifically that knows how to teach professionals. How would you say? Because I was at an Epson Tour tournament. We have one here in Connecticut, and these players sometimes they'll have like 4 weeks in a row on the road. What advice would you give? Or this could just be up to them. What advice would you give to a player? They struggle. Let's say they miss a cut, and then next week they have another tournament, and so they have to go on the road. They can't see their coach. What advice would you give them for working on their game and hopefully they miss the cut, then hopefully next week making the cut, and maybe being in contention? What advice would you give to them if they're on the road and they can't see their coach right away if they're
Yeah.
struggling with their game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do for sure. Number one, I certainly hope they understand their own cause and effect, so they can correct themselves a little bit. But what's great is with these launch monitors, you can look at your numbers. You can see your club face, you can see your club path, you can see your angle of attack, you can see your contact point. So there's almost like a little mini coach in your launch monitor. And then any player on tour or even a mini tour, they should still have access to their swing coach while they're not physically with them. So I know like they can send videos to their coach. So even though their coach isn't right there, if they've got launch monitor data and they've got access to sending videos, which we can do in a simple text. So They should never feel like they're alone out there. But if you are playing professional golf, you absolutely should have a launch monitor that can measure face and path. I have a foresight that I basically kind of got for my son because I wanted his wedge play to get better. But I use it for my own practice, and it's super helpful to see like club face, contact point, the numbers that your coach would need you to share with them so that they can help you while you're away.
Yeah. So then after playing professionally, Kelly, just tell me a little about, what your goal was in, getting into teaching after playing professionally. Like, what was the goal ultimately for you, getting into teaching?
Yeah, it's interesting, Gavin.
Mhm.
With so much of the things that I've done and whatever level of success I've had, I never exactly knew where I was going.
Mhm.
I just always try to find the next opportunity or be happy in the opportunity that I had. So I taught at Atlanta Golf Club for 17 years in the Hamptons, and that was just a great experience. I kind of grew up there. I taught with Jeff Warren, who is a Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher, and we had a lot of good teachers come through there. So that, just kind of being happy in the place that I was and working really hard and but being open-minded to other opportunities. So when I transitioned from Atlantic to Sabonic, I spent a summer teaching there, and that's where I met Mr. Howard Milstein. I shouldn't say I met him, I'd known him for a long time, but I spent the summer teaching his wife and hanging out with him on the golf course and discussing business, and that evolved into me working as a consultant for 8 a.m. golf, which has been done that for gosh, I don't know how many years it's been now, but it's resulted in me being a much smarter business person. So I think I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I was always open-minded to the next opportunity. I was willing to try things, and I still am, that maybe I didn't fully understand, but I figured once I got my foot in the door, I would just figure it out and work hard.
Yeah. So two more things I wanted to talk about that I think would be good, Kelly. So I was interested because you deal with a lot of, getting more people involved with golf, specifically women. So what advice would you give to a beginner golfer just, starting the game? And then second part to my question, just how do you think we can get more people involved, specifically women more involved with the game of golf and just, enjoying or just, getting to play the game of golf?
Yeah, I think any beginner golfer or any new golfer, you have to take a lesson or a group clinic, or you have to get the right information because with any new golfer, and I teach a lot of first-time golfers, I love new golfers. If your grip is good, the ball will try to go straight. If your posture is good, the ball will try to get into the way. And if you're not doing those things correctly, and I don't think they're intuitive, so somebody has to show you. If you're not doing those things correctly, contact is optional, and that can be a little bit frustrating. So you've got to find somewhere to get proper information. That's actually partially why I started kind of putting a little more basic stuff out on my Instagram channel because I wanted to express loudly that your basic fundamentals need to be really good. So if your setup is good, you will hit the ball. And if you hit the ball, you will have a lot more fun. So a lot of that is just making sure that that golfer has success right away, which means they've got to have some type of instruction. And then getting more golfers in. There's so many golfers that are screen golfers, that are top golfers, that are drive shack golfers. So I think the next step would be how do we get those golfers to transition to something a little more green grass? Because there's a huge number. And if we can just start to educate them that their technique gets a little bit better, that they hit it better, that they want to start to get a little more par three course, maybe. They can come play our threes in Greenville or play a par three somewhere. So grabbing those kind of screen and entertainment golfers and making them a little bit better so that they come to more green grass, I think would be the next wave of the future for the golf industry.
Yeah. And finally, Kelly, you've been, teaching for over 30 years. Just what is teaching, and being part of the LPGA professionals and, your recognition to now being one of the best teachers now in the country, just all this, what does it mean to you?
Well, given when it's interesting when you say that, like what pops into my head are my fellow LPGA professionals who have won this award previously to me, and many of them are really good friends. So sharing this award with those women that are my friends and that I have great admiration for is first and foremost. And I think it's going to require me to step up a little bit and start to share my message with the younger professionals. I think that's going to really have to be my next step is I'm going to have to help educate and share the message that was shared with me through the teachers that I learned from. So, I see my fellow female professionals, sitting right next to me with this award. I see Mike Adams sitting next to me with this award, and I think I've got some work to do to help the up and comers.